So hi everyone, and welcome to this joint event together with Adobe XD, and welcome to you, Lisa. I'm so happy that you are up for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, the topic today is level up your user experiences with Preely and Adobe XD. And the agenda for today is that now I'm going through like all the practical stuff. Then Lisa will take over and introduce us to Adobe XD together with sharing some tips and tricks on how to accelerate your design process and actually also create a prototype. Then I'll take over and show you how you can run this prototype as a remote unmoderated test in Preely. And then we actually have a small thing for you guys as well, because then at that point we actually need to test participants for the test. So we hope that you're up for participating in the test. So we actually have some results we can go in and assess afterwards and see which type of data do we have from the test and which type of insights can we actually make some informed decisions on. From the practical side, you can ask questions in the QA section here in Zoom, and we hopefully have time for some questions at the end. And I think we're okay with extending the meeting a bit if there's a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
The event is being recorded, so we will also share the recording with you in the next couple of days as well. So I think that was all the practical stuff. And then a short introduction, of course. So like, I'm Tina Øvald, I'm the Chief Experience Officer here at Preely. I have a background in engineering psychology and hold a PhD in information systems with a focus on agile UX. I worked a lot with UX, user experiences, UX in general, usability, user testing, and also a lot with this term of measuring UX as well. And then I have had experience with managing UX processes, strategy, product development, and agile transformation in various organizations. And combined with this, I've also had this academic track where I worked together with the IT University of Copenhagen, Aarhus University, and Aalborg University as well. So today I'm going to take care of the test part. And then we have you, Lisa. So great that you're here. So can you introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, that sounds amazing. You do so much. It's so cool. I feel humbled to follow. Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Lisa. I am a design strategic development manager at Adobe, and I focus on sort of the design aspect of creativity. My remit is to cover sort of the UK, all of the Nordics as well, and across some of Europe and the Middle East. So if you do have any questions, do look me up on LinkedIn. I'm very happy to connect. My background is I'm actually an ex-UX designer myself. I led a design team for 4 or 5 years at Barclays in the UK and HSBC. I'm specializing in exploring some of the newer areas such as voice and chat user interface. But obviously UX as a whole is an incredible bag of designing experiences, and that's definitely my passion. And especially understanding how we get the best out of research and understanding what that means for developing and iterating experiences within a business and an enterprise organization for design teams. Before that, I spent a lot of time working in e-commerce, so slightly different lens, but obviously all the same sorts of things apply about how best to get the best out of your experiences for users that are looking to buy something. So that's me.
Interesting.
Cool.
Take away.
Okay, cool. All right. So today, to start off and to lead into what Tina's going to be talking about in terms of testing, we're just going to show you a little bit about XD, which is obviously what I work in most and what I like to talk about. So can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Okay, well, welcome to XD. XD is an all-in-one design and prototyping solution. A lot of design teams might use Sketch, might use Figma. It's very, very, very similar to that. But also, if you have a background in illustration with Adobe Illustrator, if you've worked in InDesign, or if you use a lot of Photoshop to design your experiences, you're going to find XD incredibly intuitive because of the way that it works. It's part of the Adobe family. A lot of it's in the same sort of place, and those requirements that you'd expect in one, you can see in the others. And then XD. Here you can see we've got 3 different operations, sort of mode of operations, basically within the app. I can design and build pretty much any type of digital interface, really, when you're thinking about it, and especially from a prototyping perspective. Here I've got a very simple set of screens, which are iPhone 11 screens. And we're going to be building or working on some of these today. And then I'll be handing them over to Tina for testing. And that's very simple using the Preely plugin. And I can talk a bit more about plugins and how the services kind of work within the XD environment. So let's jump straight in. We've got 2 tasks here today, 2 briefs, 2 sets of hypotheses that we'd like to test. The first one is we want to understand on a very simple login page, when a user's downloaded an app for the first time, they're probably going to have to sign up and sign in rather than sign in first. So we need to build the 2 different onboarding screens, the straight up login and a sign in screen. And just to show you how easy it is to design elements within XD, you can basically, here I've got a square rectangular box and a bit of text that I've created in groups together, which is very simple. And instead of having to copy and paste everything like we sometimes do like this all the time, and that kind of opens up the risk of things changing and sort of in discrepancies kind of moving into your design, especially when you've got multiple designers creating the same thing. I can actually go ahead and create a component here, like so. And you can see that that bounding box turned into green, and it's got this little green diamond, and a new component appeared in my document assets, which is a collection of components and character styles and colors that are apparent within this document. So now I've created this one, I can actually copy and paste and create a new component here. But if I was to change anything in the master component, such as say the color of the text, it will change across all of the different components that are using that family. And things like that within XD, excuse me, I have something stuck in my throat. Things like that within XD really help define the consistency of your experience, especially when you're working in large design teams. So here we go. We've got 2 here. I'm going to turn this one into password. Oops, password. Check my spelling there. And we're going to create the same thing over here. Oops. No. I can also drag it straight from my component library here. So I can actually share my library with other users, and instead of them having to create the same thing again, they can basically create from exactly what I've offered them. So here we'll have up and create something such like that. And you can see also here I've created exactly the same, another call to action, which is this one. You can use this one here. And here we're going to change this to open account, something like that. And you can see, because I have changed a child component instead of a master component, the children of a component don't have to change at all, or don't have to affect the main master component. So you do have a lot of flexibility with these components, and I can go into that in a lot more detail if you want to find out more about those and how they work. And another thing that we have in XD, and it's quite important. I'm so sorry. Another thing that we have in XD, which I think is very important, is being able to check your own accessibility standards, which is quite prevalent at the moment, to make sure that we have accessible design, and we're accounting for it in all of our designs from the very beginning. There's a fantastic plugin called Stark, which is partly free, but you can pay for the extras if you wanted to. And I'll show you just how simple it is to use here. I've got this little subtext here that's got a smaller call to action, something that we're going to be using in the prototype later on. And I'm going to question the color that I'm using here. It's quite light. And you can see immediately here that the 2 colors, the white background, it's not passing any of the accessibility standards that it should. These are global accessibility standards, so they should, they're very good to sort of make reference to. So if I change this to black, and you can see all of the different things that I can change in terms of font, sizing, color, very similar to things like Photoshop or Illustrator that you might have seen before. Now you can see it's passed everything. So a really quick check. I don't have to wait for developers to tell me once it's live or once it's halfway through development. I can check as I'm designing, which is great. So there we go. I've got 2 screens there, and they're ready to test for my first hypothesis. Moving on to the second task, which I'll be passing over to Tina later. We want to find out deeper in the app if our user can find something, so a navigation exercise. So here we've got the login, we've got a little sort of splash screen, which is going to be timed, and that will take them after login into a homepage. So here I want to show you some really nifty tools to really speed up your design process. When you've got menus that are repeated, more often than not, you would sort of copy and paste and you'd make sure that everything is tabular, that you'd have to control and make sure that the spacing works nicely across all of the units like this. But we have something called a repeat grid, which is here. If I just tap this, you can see that the bounding box changes to have these 2 sort of pill handles. And what that does is effectively smartly allows to repeat exactly what you've just contained within that group. So I can just go on forever. I can even go sideways if I was working on desktop. And I can make sure that all of the spaces between, the padding between, let's move it to, say, 40. Yeah, that is good. Okay, so now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe let's do one more. 6, do 7. There we go. Okay, cool. So I've got 6 menu call to actions here that I'd like to populate with some content now. So moving into another section of XD, which is quite cool. We've got our document assets, which I kind of mentioned earlier, where everything's contained within this particular document that I've been using, my components that I've sort of built. Here you can see I've got a header, which I can use and repeat over and over again like this. So I don't have to build them every single time. Now I've got my colors. So say if I wanted to add another color to this particular library, so I wanted to add this, this red background and the white for font, I can just add them like this, and then I can make reference to them throughout my entire design and prototype. But also, I can have shared with me multiple other libraries that other teams might want to share. So if I have a marketing team or a graphics team or a photography team that has built a library of photographs or anything like that, imagery, they can share with me through Creative Cloud that particular library so I can have access to them. And I can immediately bring them into my design. I can also use Adobe Stock photography as well. So if I have access to that. And here, that's what I'm going to do now. I've got a list of 6 interesting little photographs for each of my menus. Let's put this one here. Here. So now it's starting to populate. And we're really bringing the design to life now, very easily, just using straight up stock photography, which is always nice, especially when it comes to testing. You kind of want to know what sort of look and feel your users might expect, or what might confuse them, or what they what sells better, what doesn't sell better, and so on. So I'm going to add, I'm just going to change these in my design notes. I've got my plants, oops, my tasks, bear with me, it's this one, inspiration, dinner, and this one, tutorials. Okay. So there we go. There's my home page with a list of various different areas in my app that a user might want to use for gardening or for vegetables. So we're obviously looking at that theme. And our hypothesis is actually around this particular one, dinner, or no, actually, let's call it recipes. recipes, recipes. So the user will tap on this with the expectancy to find recipes. That takes us to our next page. We've got that here. So I don't really like this particular image of drinks. So what I can also do is search straight within Adobe Stock for, let's look for a green smoothie. Oh, my cap's not in. Yes, nice. Okay, so just to bring one of these in, I simply add it. I haven't technically paid for it yet, but I don't need to. I'm just looking at wireframes. I'm just looking at placement right now. So I can use a watermarked image for sign off so far. And it's as simple as bringing it in like that. So rather than having to search through the internet, find the right resolution or anything like that, Adobe Stock's brought right within XD, and you can sort of play, explore, find things that you like. So there we go. I've got my second design flow there ready. Excuse me. And now we're going to move into prototype mode. So not much changed, except this area here is now not about design. It's not about the details of assets or components. It's about what connects to what's the sort of the prototyping flow. So if I take a look at this, we can see that there's a link here already that I set up earlier. On this particular asset, all I did was drag this, link it to the next page, and you can see that on tap, this is our trigger. There's a transition. I can set the destination, I can tell the animation, and I can tell how long the animation is going to last for. It's that simple. So I'm just going to take that through now. So here, we want the user to be able to log in. So this is going to be our active point. I simply click and hold, drag it. I could drag it over to this one if I want to. Or here, you can see it lighting up, blue bounding box, let go. And I've got tap, transition, it's moving to the submit page, dissolve, ease out, which is great. So that's the automatic default set. Here we've got an interesting one, we've got time. So because there is no interaction for the customer here to use, what's going to happen is once the prototype lands on this particular page, there's a time trigger. There's a delay of 1 second, and then it will transition automatically to the home page with the same sort of animation. Now here, actually, we've got all sorts of different prototyping techniques here. You've got tap, you've got drag, you've got time. If you're looking at interactivity within games, keypads and gamepads, you can use keys and gamepads. And even voice, we've actually got plugins for Alexa and Google Assistant if you want to explore voice interaction and what that might look like. And that's actually quite helpful in terms of accessibility as well, returning to that point about how your prototype is able to interact with users on a different level. So really interesting spaces to explore there. But anyway, so we've got this one on time, this one on tap. We'll do one more here, recipes. So I'm just going to click on this picture here, move it over here. Now that's linked recipes. So now if we get to play this, it's as simple as logging in, there's a pause, it loads, I can scroll, I hit recipes, and there we go. A very, very, very simple flow. But just going back to that, this one page here, my last point, there's this little bar which I wanted to include at the bottom, kind of like a footer, and everything obviously is scrolling behind it. And I've actually set this to be sort of sticky, if you will. So here, when I go back into design, there's a little tab here that says fixed position when scrolling, which means that that stays on top and at the bottom. So there you go, like that. And it's those little things that really help the sort of bring a prototype to life. And are very easy to do and build. So we did that very quickly. The last section, the third point of XD is the share. So what's really great about XD is that you don't have to go anywhere or publish anything to another portal and rebuild it like in a lot of other types of prototyping software or design software, all within one place, all self-contained. I can share this for design review, for development, for presentation. So actually you can use this like PowerPoint for sort of the larger desktop experiences, and for user testing, as well as custom things. So I can also add other people to review my work or collab with me, so live co-edit. And here I'm just going to add Tina. And I have the opportunity to add a message. So Tina, prototype. Oh gosh, not shouting at you, Tina, sorry. Tina is.
Love it. Good.
Can you hear me? No. Here's your prototype ready for testing. I can invite to edit. And Tina will get a notification and she will be able to open up. And even whilst I'm in it, she can sort of access it. We can continue a conversation. We can design together if needed be. And she can continue to take this and consume it within Preely. So that's a very, very, very short overview of or flyby of Adobe XD. And as I said, if you've got any questions or you want to have a conversation about it in a more deeply, do get in touch. I'm more than willing to find out about what you're designing and how we can help.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I think it's so interesting to see how much you can the process here, and you just like, you know, just by 2 taps, then you actually have it just out there, and then you can just like start
absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So that's actually what I'm going to talk about now, because I have the file now from Lisa, and now I will show you how you can actually export the prototype to Preely, and then make an unmoderated remote user test. So now this is the document I have from Lisa. And now we want to export it. So I have installed the Preely plugin for Adobe XD. That's what you see on the left. And I've also signed into Preely here. So that's when you have done that, this is the view you'll see. And now we actually need to link this prototype to a test in Preely. So I'll just tap link. We'll go in the browser. We will log into Preely. And then I say, okay, I want to create a new test. I do it like this. We call it testing. We said English. We said and then we go back here and say Open XD again. And then we have actually linked Preely and Adobe XD together. So that's great. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'll not export both of the flows here. I have done that like from home, so you'll see that in a bit. But just to see how easy it is, we actually just want to export the first flow. And again, it depends on how you work as a designer, because I know some designers work as Lisa and I, as we've done here. Some will make a whole flow, and you can also just export that to Preely and then build the prototype from that, and then, you know, slice it up over in Preely. It's just, we cater for everything here, so it's not a problem at all. So now I've linked Adobe XD to Preely. I select the flows I want to export. I'll just export flow 1. I'll make sure that the interactions are here as well, because we don't want to do double work. So the interaction these are made under the prototype theme, we'll have them over in Preely as well. And then I tap export, and we'll see, okay. And now we actually have the 2 screens in Preely. And if we go into to the screens, we can also see that the interaction is over in Preely as well. So we have these 2, so that's beautiful. So before I start to make the test here, I actually want to enrich the prototype a bit. So, you know, when you often make prototypes and the tools you have, you actually, if you have some user inputs, you need to be able to say, okay, you just tap through it, you will not have some real inputs. But we can actually enrich prototype in Preely by adding what we call Pre-Deforms. And this is actually it. So we are actually able to say that, okay, if you are on a desktop, you can actually write in real information here. And if you are on a phone, like if it's an app design in this case, then a keyboard will show up, and then you're actually also able to type in the type of information that you want your participants to have. So we will add that to it here. This we want to be an input field, an email input field, so we will add it as an email. We'll make sure that the font is a bit bigger than this one. And then we also want to make it required. So that's actually because we're testing a sign-up flow here. So of course the participant should not be able to go on in the app before they have actually typed in some things, so they can actually make a proper sign-up. So we'll tap that as required like this. Then I'll just copy paste this and move that down here as well. And then make sure that the type of input is set to the password field, because that's what we're asking for, and we still keep it required. So now I've actually enriched the prototype so you can have a real experience when you actually try it out, and also when your participants try it out. Then we go over on the right side here, and that's actually where you make the test unmoderated, and remote as well. So all the things you normally will do when you conduct a moderated test, you will actually put that into Word here instead. So for instance, we have the intro text here saying that, okay, welcome, you're invited to test our prototype. You can change this. This is Lisa's prototype, so I'll add Lisa to it. Say, okay, this is from Tina and Lisa. You are able to set a company logo if you want to do that. That's not a problem, but we want to just use my account picture for this one. So that's orange. And now we have set up the first step in the test. When you test with Preely, you always need to have some sort of task. So in this case, we want the participant to sign up. So we need to insert an element, add a task, and then you have this pop-up coming. And there you give an introduction. I now prepared from home, so I have said that the introduction should be this one. So you have downloaded our app and have opened it for the first time. And then you set the task. And in this case, we want participants to sign up. So we say, sign up in the app. And then you can see how it's going to look like in the prototype on the phone as well here. We say create. And now we know that the test is going to start on the first screen. We can see that here, one onboarding. And then we actually also need to set where should the test stop or the task stop. And we want to have it here. And then we need to add an ending. And when you add an ending, you have two opportunities. You can set a timer. So that means that when you reach this specific page, you can set a timer, for instance, for 1 second. And then we'll continue in the test, or you'll continue to the question. In this case, we want to have an endpoint. And an endpoint just means that we want the participants to click on this button down here in order to go further on in the test. So we put that here. And now, because I've said that the input field should be, we want to have some information in the input field before you can go on. We type, okay, we want to validate if there's actually something typed in or not. So we click that off, and then we make sure that we also have an error message. And in this case, if you don't type in anything, you'll just have this error message saying, okay, make sure that everything is typed in. And then you actually have now you actually have a test. So I will be able to share it with you guys, and then you'll actually be able to go through this test. So we have a lot of performance data now collected, but in this case, we actually also want to have some self-reported metrics as well. So we want to add a question in this flow together with the task. So we have the opportunity of asking a question, and then you can choose which type of answer types you want to have here. So we have different rating types. As you can see here, you're also able to set your own label. So if you want the semantic differential scale, for instance, by all means, just do it on the platform. You can also set a multiple choice, and you also have free response. In this case, I would like to add a Likert scale, and I want the question to be, I found this task easy. I want it on a 5-point Likert, and then I want the end labels to be strongly disagree for 1, and then strongly agree for 5. And you can see all the things I'm typing in. You can see that in the preview over here as well. Then I want to have some more qualitative data as well. So I actually want to add a follow-up question. So why did you give this rating as well? And then I can actually set this as an optional, or I can set it as a mandatory. So by default, it's mandatory. So I'll keep it as a default because I think we will have some quite good insights from this one. And then I'll type create. And then we actually have the prototype up and running and the test up and running in the Preely space. Then before we'll send something out, you also have the opportunity of saying, do you want to include demographic data? We'll keep that one for this purpose. And then you also have the opportunity actually to start recruiting for your test panel as well. So in Preely, you have the opportunity to host your own test panel, and you can actually invite people via tests. So if you have people that have signed up for participating in one test, you can end the test asking them, do you want to be part of our panel or not? We'll not include that in this one. And then we're actually good to go, and you can share the link now. So I've cheated a bit, and I've actually taken Lisa's whole prototype and actually made a test over in Preely. And as you can see, the first two screens are actually exactly the same as we saw before, where like we put in some input fields, and we have also made a task, and then have added a task more for the B flow that Lisa had in her file as well. So this is actually task 2. And then I have added some more questions. I have a CSAT question here. So that's actually a semantic differential scale on a 7-point scale. We have an NPS score as well. And then I've also added a multiple choice, so we can just see when we have some results, how it's going to look like over in Preely. And now I actually hope that people are up for participating, because we need some results before we go over and actually look at the analytics in Preely. So if you have your smartphone, then just open the camera and scan this QR code, and then you should be good to go. So I hope people are up for that. I think we'll just give you a couple of minutes, and then we'll continue. And maybe if you can just raise your hand in Zoom when you're done, so we know when how long time it actually takes. So I hope you are game for this one.
That's amazing. I'm just doing it now. It's really easy just to yeah.
And we're also quite happy now, because we actually had an app before, so we've actually we're not killed it off, because we want to enrich that with a lot of other things like during the next year. But now in this case, you're actually opening the test in a browser, so we don't have that obstacle of opening an app here now. So that's quite nice.
It's very cool. I think what's amazing, I think, for teams that are working at pace, to be able to just take out a little section of what you might be designing and just run small tests with those to find out really nuanced feedback from customers, and then just continue to iterate. The speed at which you can set something up, even as a designer, it doesn't even need to be like part of a research team. You might be a hybrid team. And then get that information back so quickly, I think is
and that's also what we want to talk into with Preely, right? Being in this agile environment where you set up some stuff, you maybe like have some new designs, a new concept, a new feature, and then you set up a test, put it into Preely. You can see how fast it was with one task, one question, right? And then you'll just add more task and more question, and you have the prototype lying hopefully somewhere else where all the interactions and so on are, so you don't need to think about them when you actually export them to Preely. So what we normally say is that, like, in the end, for instance, if we work agile, in the end of a sprint, put it into Preely, make a test, send it out, just leave it there, and then let us collect all the data. And then when you return to the next sprint, then you actually have some data to harvest.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that data is kind of laid out, because what's really interesting is being able to set up scores that a business might be able to understand in terms of NPS or SaaS scores and things like that.
Exactly.
It really helps combine and strengthen. I know a lot of UXers love qualitative data. We live off of it. It's great, right? And it really helps us color our experiences in the right sort of way. But to be able to communicate that to our business leaders, our project or product owners, to be able to match that against an NPS score and say, okay, so this is how it's working in my test, and this is how it's currently working in live, and being able to compare and see that journey and predict that journey with them, as an application or as a service evolves, I think is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and like before I joined Preely, I also worked a lot with UX KPIs and metrics in general. And also just being able to actually, one thing is to look into the NPS score, because that's quite easy to convey to business, because that's something they know. But another thing is that you can actually start having some company specific UX metrics, for instance, that you start measuring already on a concept level, and then actually measure them along the way, so you always know where you are in the development. And then we also saw, like in the previous company, that we could actually bridge between being in development and have a launched product. So we were not that like surprised anymore, because we had actually the numbers already, so we could just track them and then and then still track them when the product was actually out as well. So there's a lot of empowerment in having some numbers here, and that's also why we say that, okay, talking into the whole quantifying usability and UX. Sometimes it's not the right way to do it. Like if you are in the beginning of a development phase, you should definitely go out and do your qualitative research and so on. But when you start to have something tangible, then put it into Preely and start collecting, because you just get smarter along the way. The more information you get, the more insights you get, the more informed decisions you can also make, right?
And at the speed at which everybody wants to travel, you know, like the businesses are needing to change and evolve very, very quickly. So the more designers can keep up with that, yeah. In digital spaces, like using XD, like using Preely, and aligning themselves to those agile methodologies is really, really, really strong. I think that's the way that we're going.
And exactly. So I'll just share my screen again and see if we have some results in. I think we have, to be honest. I can see it's still taking here. And we still have somebody who is working. So I'll just continue because we don't have that much time. But this is the analytics part of Preely. And the first thing you notice here is the summary. So here we can actually see we have 21 people who have started the test, and we have 14 that has completed the test up until now. Then we have something called drop off, and we have something that's called gave up. So if you gave up, you actually tap a button in the app or on like in your prototype, and then there's actually a field where you can write why you gave up. If you just have a drop off, that's where you close down the browser, close down the app, and then you're just like, this is not for me. So that would be a drop off. And in these two, there's actually also a lot of information normally, because there's always something, because there's like an area where people doesn't understand what is going on, and then they will have a drop off quite often. Then we have the gender distribution, we have the average age, and then we also have the device contribution, and that's not updated yet. So sometimes they will go like 10 minutes before we have all the information. So that's the case here. Then we have the tasks, and this reflects one-to-one what you saw in the prototype phase. So all the things we set up when we wanted to set up the test, we have that in here. So the first ones are actually the two we set up together. So that's the sign up in the app, and that's the first question, where we also have a follow-up question. And this small plus down here is indicating that there's a follow-up question that is not shown on here because that was just a rating, but there is some more information if you go deeper. Then we have each participants over here, and it's actually divided into completed, gave up, and drop off. And you actually have the opportunity of going in on a specific person here. So for instance, normally when you have a moderated test, you'll have a lot of notes and so on, and you should actually have the same model, like mental model around this area here, because here you can go in and assess the information from a specific participant, and if there's an outlier, you're also able to delete that person from the data if you don't want to have that reflected in the aggregated data as well. You are able to go in and look into the flow or the journey or the path, as we call it in Preely, how they have done it. So we can see this one has actually typed down here, and we can see how long it has taken. And then we can also see the person have typed in hello@gmail.com as the email, and then we are masking the password, because if people are putting in real information, we don't want to have that lying around here. And then the last one is the set up my account. So we also have this enrichment when it comes to the input fields as well. If we go back to the aggregated data, we can see here that we have the first task. We have the success rate here, it's at 94, so that's actually quite great. And it's talking into some of the hypotheses Lisa mentioned as well. Like that could, for instance, be a good metric to look at, like, do they actually understand understand how to sign up, or is there any issues here? So we can see that the success rate is quite good here, and we can see how many have gave up and how many have made a drop on this specific task in the prototype. Then we have the average time on task, and we also have the number of paths. And then we can go in and look more into details. And here there's actually some quite good input. So here we can see how people have actually interacted. So both the first action, second action, and also the last action. So a lot of things is going on here. You also have the opportunity of actually highlighting, okay, in the prototype, how many have actually interacted in this space as well. You have the opportunity, of course, to see both flows, and then you can also see like the first time, the first action, the last action, and in this case we're showing all actions, and also if they have come back. So you can imagine that if we have a very complex prototype, for instance, and people are a bit lost, for instance, then they'll start, then you'll see a pattern where they come back to the front page again and again, because they then start the searching from where they started the task. So you will have some quite good information here. And you also, like in this one, there's been a bit of scroll, so you also are able to see like how many people have been in the different areas, and so on. Then we have screen statistics. We have average time on screen. We have average time to first action. The average time on screen is actually quite interesting, because that says something about the cognitive strain from the participant here. So has there been some issues here? Have they been like confused or and things like that? In this case, of course, people have been typing in some stuff, so that's why it's high as it is. So of course you need to make sure that you know which space you're in and which context you are looking at the data, right? Then we have total visits and we have unique visits, and that actually talks a lot into what I said before, being like, okay, if your participants are starting to get confused, the total number will almost always be much bigger than the unique number of visits. So that also gives you some good indication. And then we have the hotspot hit ratio, and that's where, like, okay, do people actually tap or click on the buttons we want them to tap on? And that gives a good indication of, do you actually have the right labeling on your buttons? Are they placed in the right, do you have the right placement in the prototype, and so on? So you will start to form some insights here, where you actually have valuable information from more sources. So normally you will start like you massaging your data, and then actually have some great insights when it comes to this type of things. Of course, you have a lot of the UX metrics on the front page, where you can just say something from the test just like right away. And then if you want to have more insights, more valuable insights, more things where you can ask why did they do it, then you start doing this, of course. And then we have the top 3 next screens, and you could imagine that if you have a more complex prototype, then we'll have much more screens in here. And then you can also start to see where do people actually start looking for solving your task as well. And if there's some issues here, then you can say, okay, where did the majority of your participants actually look? And maybe we should actually start verbalizing the wording of the label, the wording of the menu, and so on, like this one instead, because that's actually where the majority have been searching for it. So that has, I think that's quite valuable, to be honest. Then we have path, and in this one it's fairly easy, and we actually have 2 paths. Now I didn't know if we have updated that one, but when we were on the summary, we could see that there were 2 paths, and that's actually the path that the participants have taken. And in this one, again, it's so easy, right? But the idea here is that you can start, as you said, Lisa, when you made the prototype, you can start looking into the navigation. How are they actually navigating? Where are they searching? Which type of mental model do they actually have in order to solve this task you have set them out to solve? And then we have all the participants that have chosen the path. We have the average time on path, and then also the screens. And then you can also look into which participants that have actually taken this specific task. And then the same goes for, we have this number 2 path. There's a person that have taken another path here, maybe been a bit back and forth. And here, one person, like the average time and the screen as well. So that's what we have in there. Then when we we have the action, of course, as we talked about before, and then we have heat maps as well. And it's actually the same information as we had on actions. The only other thing here is that visualization is a heat map. And I come from a UX world, so normally I'll take all my informations from actions, because that's definitely where there's a lot of valuable for me to make some decisions from. But when I talk into stakeholder communication, and especially talking into business, normally I'll copy paste this and put that on my slide, because that's something that resonates very well with business. And the same goes for, like, when we talked about the NPS score as well, right? That's something talking into business, maybe not something that UX specific, but sometimes you also need to cater for your stakeholders in this game as well. So we have that. Then we have sessions, and that's actually the same as going into participants. So here we have each participant and then divided down on each task. So if you have a very complex prototype, sometimes it's nice to just be able to say, okay, I want to see this specific participant in this specific task and see how that person have interacted with the prototype as well. So that's overall what we have when it comes to performance data. You, of course, we can export the results in a comma-separated file. So if you want to go in and make some more in-depth statistics, make a correlation and so on, you can download everything and just use your preferred tool or statistical tool for that one. So it's actually fairly easy. And then if we like scroll down, we have the question. Here we have the Likert scale. We can see how many have actually answered this one. We can see there were one drop off. We can see the rating is quite good here, actually like a bit over 4. We can see the highest and the lowest. And then we also can go into answers and see how the rating is actually distributed as well. And we can go in and see, okay, what have people actually rated? And also the follow-up question, you also have the answer to that here as well. So that's it. And then, like, of course, you went through the whole test. So all the results is here. You can go in with the number 2 task. That's exactly the same information you have here. Of course, it's there's a bit more going on. We can see like if people have been scrolling and been looking for where they should go and so on. And again, this is a sunshine scenario, so we didn't have interactions for everything here. So you were not able to branch out and look into, for instance, my plans and so on. But of course, you'll do that normally when you set up a usability test like this. And again, then we have the NPS score, that's 6, and then we have the multiple choice where we show the data like that, and then you have the opportunity, of course, to go in and look more into details. So I think that was it. It's quite a quite fast walkthrough, of course. And again, we have this Preely masterclass in April, where definitely, like, if you are interested in know more about like in-depth analytics and so on, then like sign up for that one, because then we'll go into details and also talk more into how we can support the mental models, how we can support the navigation hierarchy and all of these things, of course. So I think that was all from me, and I can see the questions that start ticking in. So the first one is from Bailey. So now we are going into Q&A, just so you know. Is the XD team adding a way for those who don't own the documents to update the link?
Currently, one of the biggest frustrations is, okay, so Bailey, I imagine you are talking about when you're in a co-edit environment. And so there's one user that owns the document and you've all been invited, but that the owner is the only one that can publish the link or republish the link or share things. Coming soon, in the next, well, in this year, we're making some major changes to the way in which ownership of a document exists. There's not an awful lot I can go into to sort of describe what's about to come out, but the way in which they're upgrading that sort of ownership will definitely include some changes to that. It's not a question that's come up, but it's in the same remit. So I imagine that there will be some major changes. So you will be able to share ownership effectively of a file, which means you would be able to publish and republish that link, because the ownership would be shared effectively amongst a group of people, rather than just that one user. I hope that answers your question, but if you want to find out a bit more, do get in touch and we can find out more about how you guys are using XD, and if it's applicable to you guys.
Oh, that sounds great. So Mads is asking, are you able to set up different questions depending on e.g. the score selected in the Likert scale? And that's for Preely. This is actually something we're working on as we speak, because we want to have some more logic on the platform and also be able to set up, for instance, a question at the beginning saying, are you a customer or not? and then actually have 2 different tests depending on the answer. So right now we are trying to look into like how can we frame this so it's not too overwhelming, both for us and also for the designers using the platform. But it's definitely something we are looking into, having this like dependent on the answer, what is going to happen next, because we definitely see that as a major opportunity when it comes to these things. And then I can see there is a question more for Preely. So when somebody writes other in the gender field, does it show up in the summary? No, yeah, the results of course show up in the summary, will not show up that as an other in the summary page. So so there you'll just have the women and men, and then the other will be the rest that is not counted in as we speak. And that's actually something, and maybe I should just throw that out there, like, are there demand for actually having more gender diversity when you answer these type of things? I think this is something we have been discussing quite a lot in the team as well, also with all the things that is going on and so on. So of course we want to cater as much as possible for the things going on. So definitely reach out to us if you want to have something added in that perspective. And in general, just reach out if you have anything where you're just like, okay, do Preely support that or not? Reach out and then we'll figure out if we do or not. And if we don't, if we can see that there's more people or more companies asking for it, then of course we'll see what we can do from our side. So that's the beauty of being a small agile company.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay, now Jens is asking a question to you, Lisa.
Oh.
Is there any way to work with more rapid prototype tools in XD? Perhaps more like Balsamiq, Azure, and so on?
Yeah, I mean, so there are various different prototyping plugins that you can use within XD. There's lots of different opportunities to sort of include micro animation within XD itself, in fact, or like I touched upon accessibility. There's lots of different additional add-ons that really sort of bolster the experience within the design environment. There's actually I don't know if I can share it in a chat or not, but there's actually a page on one of the XD sites that has a whole list of all the different types of plugins and in the different areas, from prototyping to online facilitation, to accessibility, to live copy import. That's a really big issue for designers, having to copy stuff that's coming over from marketing teams. All of these different add-ons that really help enable efficient workflow processes. I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. And then I'll also add to that, because I actually use XD for that as well. So it just depends on how I'm doing it. So I make a lot of like very simple wireframes in XD, where it's like, lines and so on, maybe some screenshots and so on. So that's also a way where you just like, I'm not going into any details. We have a UI designer doing that for me. So everything is a very high level when I work. So that's definitely also an opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, you can work from sort of, like really detailed prototypes, if that's the way that your team or yourself kind of works as a designer, or if you're looking at simply just sort of information architecture, flow mapping, or even just a user journey. So like, let's take one step away from the digital world and think about your holistic journey experience. Maybe you're working within branches, or you're having to work out the experience within telephone teams and things like that. You can really think about mapping that user experience within XD, and thinking on the fly now, you can import that straight into something like Preely and actually have, it's not really a prototype, but it's to source that information back from your customers or the colleagues that you might need that information from. So it is very, very flexible. And like I said, do get in touch if you wanted to find out more about how you can sort of flex on XD in that respect.
That sounds great. So there's a question for Preely. Can you have multiple successful task ends on the same task? And yes, you can. So today it was very easy, but of course you can set up multiple endpoints for your task as well. And also you can set multiple both endpoints, but also end timers if you want to. And you can also combine a timer and an endpoint if you want to do that as well. So for instance, if you are a bit afraid that people will not find your button, if that's what you're testing, then you can set a timer so everything will just like time on after the set amount of seconds afterwards. So no problem. And then I can see that there's a question for Preely. Again, can you include images in your questions? No, you cannot, but that's also something we have heard a bit before, to be honest. So again, that's something we have it on our radar, and we're trying to count how many people would like to do that, and then we'll see if that's something we want to include on the roadmap at some point. So yeah, I think that was it, Lisa. Like, we've gone a bit over time today, but thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It was really good. I learned so much. It's so interesting to see the depths that you can go to, and it was a nice reminder. Sort of kind of miss the UX world a little bit in terms of user research is really insightful when you use it correctly. Yeah. To get some fantastic experiences for customers. Yeah.
And I'm just happy because I use XD myself, so also get some tips and tricks. I think that's so nice.
Well, you know where I am.
Oh, that's awesome. So thank you for now. We have our next meetup April 8th, where we have Olivia Haar joining us from SimCorp, where she is working on scaling UX actually. So within a safe environment, so say scaled agile framework. So we have that one, and then we also have our meetup or our masterclass about Preely. So if you want to go more into details, we're going to do that on that one, and also where people can bring some of their tasks themselves and have like hopefully some solutions to how they can solve that from a Preely point of view, at least. So I think that was all from now. We'll send out the recording afterwards in the next couple of days, and I also think we'll include links to the 2 meetups in that one as well. And then by all means, like, if you have any questions, just reach out, and then we'll see what we can do. So I'll just say thank you for now. Thank you for joining, and have a great day or great evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.